Good morning and welcome to another webinar from NextView. Today we're going to talk about connected sales and distribution in manufacturing. We have a great set of speakers today. I'm actually really proud to have them. We have Bart Pannenkoek, Director B2B at Salesforce. Welcome, Bart.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. We have Hans Zeiger, Chief Business Development Officer at Mitsubishi Logisnext Europe. And we'll talk about it as MLE. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have our own Dico Timmerman, Industry Lead Manufacturing at NextView.
Thank you, Lars. Good morning.
Morning. So we think we have a pretty interesting program for you today. As you know, if you're a regular to our webinars, you know that we try to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, please ask them. So on the right of your console that you're watching today, you'll see that you can post your questions. Your questions will end up at Fabiana from NextView, and she'll relay the questions to me, and we'll talk about them here at the table. So for this session, we typically use a Gartner paper for inspiration as well. And today we are using the Gartner paper, and I have to look because it's a long title, Improve Revenue Forecast Accuracy with Emerging Forms of Sales Forecasting. Now, for everybody here today, you'll be able to download this paper. I can wholeheartedly recommend it to go through it. It's definitely an interesting read. And it will show up, we'll discuss it throughout this webinar. So with no further ado, let's start with the topic. And I'd like to start with you, Bart. As the Director of B2B in Salesforce, I can imagine you monitor the trends in manufacturing quite closely. What is Salesforce seeing out there?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Lars. So first of all, indeed, I'm very passionate about digital transformation as a whole, and especially in the manufacturing industry. It's just very cool to be looking at these big devices that are connected, complex processes, legacy, and so on. It's exciting to see how the world is changing. And look, what I want to start with is basically just a snapshot of what are some of the customers that we have got the privilege of working with. Of course, MLE, and Hans, looking forward to hearing from you later in this webinar as well. But beyond that, major players such as ABB and Schneider Electric on the discrete side, companies like Solvay on the process side, and Volkswagen, BMW Group on the automotive side. So fantastic brands and very insightful discussions that I've been able to have with some of these customers. There's basically one key trend that is emerging on the next slide, and that is how 5, 10, 20 years ago, most of the discussions we were having was all about cost optimization. Think about large procurement transformations, Lean Six Sigma transformations. I'm sure you're very familiar with that as well, right? And in the last decade, that discussion moved away from cost and moved much more towards how can we be more customer-centric? How can we make it easier to do business with? And that means not just for the customers, but also for the partners, all the channels, the employees as well. And that for me is a very exciting topic as well.
Yeah. And to what extent is Salesforce playing a role in this field of play that you just described?
Yeah, well, thanks. That's a good question. So clearly, we offer a customer 360 view. So we try to enable our companies to actually indeed transform that experience with the customers, with the partners, with the employees. Okay. And specifically, actually, that was a good segue to this slide. There's typically 4 areas where we tend to help our customers in the manufacturing industry when it comes to digital transformation. The first, and that is primarily the topic of today, would be all about commercial excellence, so kind of the sales excellence levers, marketing excellence, pricing, and how that links to sales and operations planning. So again, on the previous slide. The other topics that are very interesting as well is around how you create new business models. And I'll share some examples later on to really move away from selling the metal, but then look at how you can move towards servitization and these kind of margin-rich solutions. The third topic that I'm very excited about as well is how you can create an agile collaboration layer on top of some of the legacy systems. Like, for example, how do you integrate supplier relationship management solutions and build a workflow to connect everyone from procurement to sales to operations in order to have more value from their suppliers. And then the final topic that is actually getting a lot of interest, especially in this particular area in the COVID crisis, is around sustainability, which doesn't just mean around greenhouse gas emissions, but also how you can improve worker safety. And then clearly, advanced analytics and digital tools play a very important role in that topic as well. But that's it for today. We'll zoom in on the commercial excellence, or connected sales and distribution.
Yep.
And again, in my mind, there's 3 typical levers that we would see. The first one is all about sales excellence. So it's about how you define your customer segments, from key strategic customers to the smaller long-tail customers, and based on that, adjust your go-to-market strategy. For example, what kind of channel do you want to use? Think key account management for your strategic customers, or e-commerce for your long tail. What kind of service you want to provide to those customers? For example, a dedicated technical expert for strategic and self-service for the long tail. So that entire optimization of how you manage the process for the different customer segments is a very interesting discussion. The second lever in commercial excellence that I see is all about how do you set the right price. So again, thinking about what kind of data is available to analyze contribution margins, for example, and be able to set the right level, but then also make sure the organization is adhering to it. So typically we see pricing non-compliance issues in manufacturing, right? So the kind of control factor within pricing excellence is key as well.
Yeah, this might be one of the most complex one, I assume. But it's actually overarching, not just sales and operations, but also actually R&D and manufacturing, I could imagine.
Absolutely, indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting discussion of what is your strategy, what is the commercial relevance of the product for a particular segment, the skills of the sales in a particular area, and of course, visibility on data. Do we know the variable cost? Do we know the willingness to pay of the customers? So very exciting discussions there as well. And then the final element would be around marketing, which of course we traditionally rely on trade fairs, but now we see that a lot more focus is on actually digital one-to-one personalized engagement as well. Really looking at what are some of the best practices in B2C, like in retail, for example, and being able to copy-paste them, or at least replicate them in manufacturing industries. It's exciting.
So a quick one for you, Hans. Do you recognize these drivers?
Well, we of course we recognize these drivers. I mean, the materials handling industry is an industry where there has been a lot of consolidation. Consolidation usually means that there is tremendous pressure on cost. So I've completely recognized what Bart was saying about cost reduction. We are also merging product lines, as we are also a company that has merged. Of course, the management of pricing and margins is very important. That means you need to stay very closely connected to your factories and whatever is changing in the current, but also future product generations. I mean, we do continuous development. The other thing that is important in the materials handling industry is that the money is made not by selling trucks, iron, but by leasing and servicing them over the lifetime, whereby the asset goes back after its first life for further use in other parts of the economy. So capturing a larger part of this is basically why we need this tool.
Yeah, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, great.
Good. I think with regards to commercial excellence strategies, I think one point is key, which is how do you connect all of this together, right? You want to go for a seamless, frictionless journey for your customers, but also internally with the factories, for example, that you alluded to, right? It starts by creating the lead through marketing and then making sure that sales is connected to that, from building the official quotes, CPQ, to making sure that the process is as efficient as possible, for example, digital signage and so on. Sales agreements play a very important role there as well, in order to also manage the run rate business and look at how your contracts are being consumed in order to feed into the planning and forecasting cycle, which is a key topic for today, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to extend it as well to kind of the customer experience around the service, right? Because once you've had sold an asset, that service is a fundamental part of the continued commercial excellence strategy.
Absolutely. I think the quality perception of the product depends on how quickly you can intervene when something goes wrong, especially in a business model where you rely on rental. It's not the customer's asset, so he kind of loses access to the service as soon as it breaks down. And then either you need to spend a lot of money by replacing the asset, or you need to be able to solve the problem accurately and mostly quickly. And not only quickly, but also in a predictable way. The customer needs to know from the moment of breakdown until the moment where he's back into operation what is going to happen. That is a huge lever for customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. So beyond just streamlining the overall journey, I think the next topic that is important here is how you move towards new business models as well, right? As you alluded to. It's a very exciting topic in my mind, and we see a lot of early movers there that are connecting their devices in order to do service like predictive maintenance, move to service contract optimization, build completely new models based on top of the analytics. Let me point out one example, and that is the third one here on this slide. That's Anderson Hauser. For those who don't know the company, they basically provide sensors for the process manufacturing industry, so that a plant manager can look at what is the performance of the factory, for example, temperature or pressure in a certain pipe, to give an easy example. Clearly, the sensors themselves are fantastic, but the margins on selling the hardware is slim. So what Anderson Hauser is doing is they've built a analytics as a service solution on top of the sensors. What I like in particular about this example is how it is very much an Amazon-like experience. So if you were to go to Anderson Hauser, you can actually go on the website and find out what kind of service fits best for you. So you can select a basic premium service, which has a certain amount of analytics you can run, a certain amount of data you can store. But then in a subscription model, you can easily upgrade to the next tier with more service, more data, more services available, which is a very interesting approach to commercializing that business model. In the same way, Rolls-Royce, I think, is also a great example, and aerospace in particular is something I'm very excited about. They've built a marketplace on top of their engines in the airspace, right? Capturing all of the IoT data in terms of number of hours run, temperature, vibration, and so on, and being able to expose that data to third parties. So now Rolls-Royce has invited third parties to also develop solutions on top of that. For example, you can develop something to optimize the fuel burn over the Atlantic and sell that solution to airlines, or try to analyze what is the noise pollution level of an engine over a city like Heathrow, for example, and sell that again to the cities themselves or the airports, so they can actually also offer that service. So this is another great example of how companies are moving away from just selling the assets, but going to service as well.
Yeah. On that note, the word servitization has been mentioned a couple of times already. Just for our audience, we have done a webinar before on servitization, which you can find back on our website under resources, webinars, and then you can go straight to the recorded version of it. So if that's of interest to you, by all means, go check it out. Sorry.
Of course. Look, coming back then to sales and operations planning, I'm happy to announce that Salesforce has launched about a year ago the manufacturing cloud, and it's actually meeting a fundamental pain point that we saw with our manufacturers, which is how can you better link sales and operations in order to have a more accurate forecasting of what is it, for example, the invested, the stock that is needed in order to fund the operations. If you manage this properly, clearly the working capital that you need is lower, and this has a tremendous uplift on the margins that you can have. So specifically, the way that we operationalize that is through an object called sales agreements, which allow manufacturers to monitor exactly what is the consumption of a certain contract in the run rate part of the business, and then being able to extend forecasting not just internally, but also externally towards partners to have the best possible view on what is going to happen with sales.
So I think apart from Marketing Cloud, obviously the Salesforce platform as a whole has tremendously extended over the years. If you're also talking about the analytics and the IoT stuff in the past, that's at least, when you think about Salesforce, you obviously think about sales, but this is definitely, a great addition to the platform and very helpful there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely continue to develop this manufacturing cloud further. And I expect it will be expedited even more with the acquisition of Velocity, which brings even more industry solutions to Salesforce.
Yeah.
The final thing.
Do you usually find that customers know what they want? Or how does Salesforce approach that? How do they find out what the demand of the market is? Because there seems to be something new every week.
Yes, exactly. It's not an easy topic indeed, because what we like to help our customers with is exactly that ideation process as well. So thinking about what should be the appropriate strategy for a customer, looking at what are other companies doing in an industry, but then also taking inspiration from other industries, and then co-innovating with the customer about what the solution could be. It can happen at different levels. Sometimes a customer wants to get a completely white space outside in view, and then we offer that kind of Ignite-like innovation service. Sometimes it's a specific topic, like how do you connect sales and operations, and then we've got a number of thought leaders who can help with defining the process, for example. Or sometimes we, of course, work together with partners like NextView and then team up on building a very robust vision as well. Yeah, it actually is an unplanned but a good segue as well to this slide, which is why Salesforce, right? So beyond the approach that I just alluded to, I like numbers, right? So one point is about how fast it could be to implement solutions, where we typically see implementation times of weeks to months, not quite years, right? It's a lot more of an agile solution than some of the legacy systems. It is also linked to business value, and a couple of examples I mentioned here on the slide, which is around how you optimize your gross profits by being more efficient, for example. And the fourth pillar is around how you can also rapidly test new ideas to ensure they have a commercial viability in the market.
Yeah, very good.
Interesting, really good.
Thanks. I actually have a question from the audience. Thanks for that. So keep them coming. Go ask Fabiana, and we'll relay them here to the panelists. We have quite the brain power here, so by all means, go pick their brains. The first one is, well, it's not too much of a challenging question, Bart. It's for you. It's how old is the manufacturing cloud?
Good question. So, as mentioned, the manufacturing cloud is about 1 year old. We launched it at Dreamforce last year. With a number of launch customers, including Kawasaki Motors. But now, actually, it's a popular product that is growing actually quite quickly. We're developing that further, including new features. Not able to talk exactly about those new features, but it will be exciting.
There's always something new around the corner.
Exactly, and it will further help to streamline exactly the sales and operations planning, but then also move into other parts of the business that are important.
So essentially, stay tuned.
Pretty much so indeed.
Okay, very good. That was the question I had so far. So once again, audience, please be interactive and give us some difficult questions to answer here. Until you do, let's move forward. And Hans, you've already spoken a little bit about what you have been doing. You've been driving a great transformation down at MLE, from streamlining the sales process, connecting the configuration and coordination with the factories. We'd love to hear more about that, but before you do, maybe a quick introduction of MLE to the audience will be in place to make sure that everybody knows you're a great company.
All right. Thank you very much, Lars. It's great to be here this morning. It'd be my pleasure to introduce the company. Mitsubishi Logisnext Group is a name that may not sound familiar to a large audience. It's actually the engine and materials handling division of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. We have our head office in Kyoto. It's a global company active in materials handling across the world. Materials handling is forklifts and warehousing equipment. Basically everything you buy in the supermarket is in some way touched by our kind of equipment. We're one of the largest producers in the world with 160,000 units sold in 2018. It's my conviction that one day they will be rented. in order to increase the revenue stream and have more control. And we're going to need the services of these gentlemen to make that happen. Big turnover, about 3 billion euros a year. And I'm responsible for the business development in the European region. Okay? Clearly a very old company. The size is a result of a number of mergers and acquisitions, but that will come back later on. Yep. Here you see, in broad terms, the territory that we cover. Clearly, all of Russia is a big market, but the focus or the gravity of our business is in the Middle East and mainly Europe, Western Europe, where we sell and partly also do the marketing of our products ourselves through factory-owned stores. The number of dealers and distributors we have is about 300 across all the brands. I'll come back to the brands later. Here you see a quick lineup of the type of equipment that we sell. So it goes from a simple power pallet truck that you must have all seen in supermarkets at some point of your life, starting from around 3,000 euros or even below, all the way up to heavy lifting equipment. And this is not even the entire product range. There's some heavier stuff above that as well. So just to give you an impression. Clearly, the first two lines are electrically driven, mainly operating indoors. And of course, for the heavier and outdoor applications, we have gas and diesel-powered trucks as well, whereby the electrically driven equipment is capturing more and more of the market as part of the trend that Bart mentioned, the environmental awareness. So that's a big, including battery technology. Here you see the product brands that we market. All of these brands are in different intensities available on the European market. You see the Caterpillar lift trucks brand, which is kind of it's a joint venture between Caterpillar and Mitsubishi. You can see it's a licensed brand. We are not the same company as the earth moving people, just to avoid mistakes. But the other brands are offered. There's also a distinction between the products we build ourselves and the products we buy from third parties, which are captured by the tow motor and the LM brand.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, looking at the extensive range of products combined with the various brands, that adds to the complexity of the journey that you've been on.
Well, all of the products we showed on the previous slide, Lars, are configurable products. So even the simple power pallet truck on the top left, you have about 50 variants, different tonnages, different fork lengths, different battery capacities, different options on, let's say, operator interfaces and so on. And each of these trucks are built to order from our factory. So we need to configure, price, and quote all the way through the distribution channels before we're able to send it to the factory, where they need to produce it in a relatively short lead time.
So what do you expect will be the future forklifts? Will we go more towards fully automated models? Can you elaborate that?
Well, automation is a massive topic. As part of the Rockla brand, which we showed earlier, has a full lineup of automated guided vehicles. This technology is becoming more and more mainstream. The key there is the navigation and the software, not to drive one vehicle, but to drive a fleet of vehicles operating in the same space, and then interfacing with the manual operations of the trucks we showed you earlier. That is growing, but it's going very, very slowly. It has some similarities with the robotization that we see everywhere, but it's still very, very much in development, and the development effort on the software side is massive.
Of course. But I could imagine there is also quite a extensive marketing effort to market all these different brands and make sure that you have your marketing around that.
Well, I mean, this is very much the result of a merger and acquisition strategy. So it, like Lars said, it adds to the complexity of our operations. Of course, all these brands have a different value proposition, which comes together in the factories we are showing. So it's not like each brand has its own factory. It's more like all the brands come from the same factory, But these factories are scattered around the territory. We have 3 factories in Europe, but another 5 outside of Europe, where we also buy products for different areas of the market. And all of these need to be directly connected to our sales and distribution operations. So that is kind of the key role we have here.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the journey that you've been on. It's been an interesting ride, I understand.
Yes, we have seen massive changes in our manufacturing footprint. So the connection between distribution and manufacturing is our core job. Historically, we had many different systems where trucks were configured and priced, but as these are converging, there was a need to harmonize that operation into a single operation with a single system and a single source of truth, so that the quality of our operations would increase tremendously. And basically, that was a complete change from many unconnected systems running on relatively old technology, where we also spent a lot of money on hardware, into a cloud-based platform where we had a single source of truth for everything. So that combined with the complexity of our product, it was quite a big job. So, selecting the technology was a long process, and then creating the blueprint of what we were actually going to implement was also a long discussion. But we finally ended up with Salesforce combined with Tacton, which is the configurator, and a supply chain management and financial package, all within the same Salesforce suite and connected, that we finally managed to integrate into a single working system. With the help of NextView. So, we probably know each other better than we pretend around this table.
Now we're transparent in that. But, very good. So what was the vision? Where did you want to go to?
Well, going back to the trends, easy to do business with. I mean, we are a Japanese company, very R&D and manufacturing driven. That's our genetic heritage.
Yep.
And we wanted to convert that into something that was more market-based, to streamline the communication with our distribution channels, speed it up, improve the quality, make it more transparent. If somebody orders a truck, you're all ordering stuff online nowadays. When you order it, you want to know when it's going into production, when it's being packed, when it's being shipped, when it's going to arrive. And you actually want to pay what you ordered and not a penny more or less. So these are exactly the things we were pursuing as well, to create a foundation for future extension of this package.
So how did you actually get to that point on configuration with all these multiple brands? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, on how you actually achieved that sort of harmonization there?
Well, first we had to harmonize the organization. So we created a core of people that were tasked with creating this configuration. Then we had to basically build all the configurations again in the new system, but we also had to check our cost. So the cost connected to the articles had to be fully worked through. Every single one with each individual factory had to be checked. And that's tens of thousands of items. So it's really a lot. And that had to be converted into a margin calculator that would actually allow us to do the transaction and to manage the discounting process, which is unfortunately common in the materials handling industry.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think what you mentioned there, the number of order lines, that is very explanatory for the manufacturing industry. So I think the audience out there will definitely recognize that.
Yeah, I think in that sense we're actually a challenging customer, because the number of lines we process is very, very high. Initially, we were not sure that a cloud-based system would be able to handle that, but technology is progressing at an amazing pace, so we're fine.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the benefits of this groundwork that you've now laid out, can you elaborate a little bit on that, on what's...
Well, I mean, we have a very strong workflow now, so it's very clear how things are running. The old systems were really sometimes causing impediments to changing of the workflow because the software couldn't follow. So we were doing things according to the way the computer wanted them.
Right.
Now we have a more robust process. It works not only in a static environment, but it's also mobile. So, if discount approval process is something we can do on the fly, everywhere, anytime, it speeds up the transaction flow tremendously. Things are not stuck because that's also visible. If they are stuck, they get noticed.
Yeah.
So overall, the whole process flow has improved tremendously, and we're able, and that's a very important feature, to kind of show that on the portal that our customers are using. So this is the online experience that we were pursuing, and that's materializing step by step.
Yeah.
Of course, we started with a small scale, a system that was free of frills, but just basic functionality. But we're getting to the point where it's becoming a really nice suite.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
I'm curious about the change management in particular. Of course, it's a Japanese company in the Netherlands. How do you drive change in that kind of complex environment?
Well, Japanese love planning. We sometimes spend more time on planning than on selling. But the flip side of that coin is also that once there is a plan in place, that the execution is quite rigorous.
Right.
So we have spent a lot of time talking about the technology, trying to get the approval from our Japanese global IT department. But once we had provided them with the right examples and the right safeguards, continuity of our process, it's also a Japanese thing. We're in here for the long run.
Yeah.
Once the plan was in place, the execution was quite rigorous. So long preparation, very long preparation, and then rigorous execution.
Yeah, and then I presume the Kaizen, the continuous improvement afterwards.
Yes, again, it's part of a planning cycle. We have recently had a change of environment with COVID. Everything is upside down, which calls for a new plan.
Yep.
So we're back to planning. Hopefully the changes we have to make will be sorted out soon, and then we can continue the further development.
We actually have a question from the audience, Hans, for you. Do you have any tangible results, improvements that you can share with us?
Yes, of course. Like I said, work cycles have shortened. From 24 hours to 6 hours when it comes to order handling. So we get 6 hours of sleep. Think about that. I think the transparency of information, so the margin and discount management are of much higher quality. The avoidance of mistakes, like we said earlier, building a wrong truck is an expensive hobby.
Yep.
That has gone down a lot. We can already see that. And the discussion with the factories is much more structured. So the actual planning and forecasting process, especially in a COVID crisis, you can imagine, in our business, early March or April, the orders just stopped.
Yeah.
And we had to tell our factories. And, we're able to manage that situation in a much more concrete way than we were before, based on the information we have. So it's starting to show the results. It's very, very promising. It's also clearly that with every good result, there's 50 questions about what else we could do and what else needs to be realized. And
sure.
I'm sure we were aware of that when we started this project.
And so these benefits, how do they affect your clients? Are they really seeing true results?
Well, of course, the clients have high expectations. They all carry iPhones with the most fantastic applications. And they're all for free. So that's kind of their expectation level when you say we're going into the cloud. I think what they see is that we have a robust process. It's not as intuitive as they would like to see. Everybody would like to configure a truck as if it was a Lego kit.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're not there yet. But where they are really happy is with the follow-up information, the status of their orders, the predictable arrival, the correctness of the invoicing and so on and so on. And that is really helping to eliminate a lot of communication. You know, communication is workload.
Yeah.
So there's less workload on both sides, and that's good for every company.
Yeah. But I think you just had a very realistic plan in seeing where you're coming from, all these disconnected, various disparate systems, and now into at least in one process. That's actually the first step that you now can start building upon, and you got to be realistic about those.
This is where we take the Japanese view that we're in it for the long run. So
Exactly.
there's always a chance to improve.
Yeah.
But it's continuous. I mean, that's the other thing. When is this finished? It's a question is often asked. And the reality is that it will need maintenance and improvement for as long as we're going to use it.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Yeah.
And also, judging by the slide that we have on here, this is just a start, right? This is...
Yeah, I mean, you can see, let me just briefly explain what this says. On the top, you see the number of factories that I showed on the previous slide. In the middle is the MLE organization, and at the bottom there is on the left-hand side, the captive distribution organization, which also has a lot of activities that are listed in red. And these red things were kind of ignored. The right part is the independent dealers, so basically who run their own operation at their own risk. They buy parts and trucks from us. We have connected the parts operation, but not fully integrated it yet, so that is something that needs to be done. But the whole servitization and business model transformation with the captive distribution is something that is still in the infant stages. And this is where we want to use the platform to connect those companies even more, as you can see in this future vision. And that's part of the roadmap we have for the next steps.
Yeah. Can we zoom in briefly on the dealers? What is the expectation from the dealers towards MLE, and how are they appreciating the solution?
Well, like I said, initially the dealers are happy with the level of information about what they ordered. I mean, basically, there's different categories and different sizes of dealers. We have large rental operations who are professional there. They are struggling with the trends you described earlier, like fleet management, capturing of cost, managing their service and maintenance activities, which, by the way, in our industry is one of the major sources of dissatisfaction from the end users, that service is not up to scratch. Of course, we deal with that in our captive stores as well, and that's something that is still in the infant stages. At the same time, there is this demand for IoT. Safety was one of your trends, environment. Our customers want to know who's driving their truck. There is lots of possibilities. If you have a complex warehouse, you may want to restrict speeds to avoid accidents, which can be driven by IoT-like systems. But that's something that's really starting.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the more you can advance in these topics, the more differentiated your brand becomes as well.
But clearly, I mean, that also goes back to cloud-type solutions. And for a customer who wants to have a complete overview of his leased assets or his rented assets, you need to combine not only the truck-type data, the operational data, but also the ERP data, like who was servicing my truck, what did he change, was it justified, how much damage did I create, and can you substantiate that? That's why we then fit shock sensors to our trucks. And it's all about making it tangible and delivering that as a service.
Great. Yeah. Very good. Let's see if we have... No, we don't have any questions at the moment, so I think we've been very clear. Thanks for that. If you do have any questions, ask them directly to Fabiana, and we'll see them here and relay them to our panelists. Now, Dico, we've heard from Salesforce, we've heard from MLE. How do you go about these transformations? You've obviously you have been involved in the project as well.
Yep.
What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So before we dive into that, Lars, I just quickly wanted to touch on the Gartner report that we have for this webinar. And what Gartner finds is that actually with a disconnected sales and operations process, you're actually losing forecast accuracy. And what they also find is that only 45% of the sales leaders actually have confidence in their forecasting capabilities.
I found that shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, it actually is. There's a lot of intuition and guessing going on, leading to missed sales targets and budget shortfalls. And actually, in the research that they did, it's attributed to poor data and data integration. So not having the right data at your fingers at the moment when you need it to when you want to make the decisions. And another one obviously is poor sales behavior, because sometimes the salespeople are not having the right tools to actually input the right data. Yes. So if you look at the upside, so when you have a connected sales and operations, so some of the benefits that you can actually have, we already talked about that a little bit in Hans's story, is for example margin optimization, actually avoiding errors in your process by being able to actually sell what can also be produced and shipped, but also revenue uplift. If you in the front know the lead times and the availability and the right sourcing of your product, you're actually able to tag that onto your original sale, be able to do cross-sell and upsell. But also on the efficiency side, have better control of your stock levels, but also your cash flow. Understand, how much days outstanding you have on your invoices, for example. So those are a couple of the benefits that you can actually have from a connected sales and operations and the transformations that we go through. But how do you get started? So where do you start as an organization on this? So we use a couple of models to do a first assessment and also help the organizations to make them aware of where they actually stand. And this first model is about digital capabilities and also the leadership capabilities that come about digital transformations. And what you see is that if you have the right digital capabilities, but also the leadership capabilities that come with that, you're a so-called digital master. It actually helps you in getting those real benefits from such a digital transformation. And what you actually see if you're not in that top right corner, in some cases you actually will see a decrease in your profit. And in this case, what we're talking about today for manufacturers, there's only roughly 20% of the manufacturers is in that digital mastery category. Right. So you really want to make sure that when you start a journey like this, that you do a good assessment on those capabilities and make sure that you start developing them, or else you're going to end up with less satisfying results.
Yeah. So Hans, where would you plot Emily before you started on this journey on that first diagram?
I think we were in the conservatives category, Lars. Clearly, I mean, Japanese companies are conservative. We have strict manufacturing heritage, which is driving a lot of our activity. And to convert that into a market-focused digital environment is a massive change. Yeah. And we're not done yet. I mean, we're now starting the transformation. Yeah. So it's going to take a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your case, there was a vision and at least a clear path ahead, but the adoption of new technology was at a lower level, I believe.
Yes, and it originated from the marketing and sales unit. Had that been embedded in a manufacturing environment as it was previously, I don't think it would ever have emerged. No. So in that sense, it was good to have the starting base we were coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. And then briefly touching on that middle model, also the point that we made earlier about your ambition levels and where you want to go to. And we also make the assessment of the sales and operations processes. We have a assessment maturity matrix for that, where we actually zoom in the various topics of the sales and operations process. Because what you want to avoid is that you start a high-profile analytics program or AI program, for example, where you don't even have the basics, your digital business in order. So you got to be cautious about those steps that you're going to be taking and have a realistic plan at hand. And the last model is something that we also refer to is that if you want to get to this and is this service optimum, if you will. You not only have to focus on your customers, the ease of use for your customers, but also for your internal users. If the system
absolutely.
cannot be used both ways in a easy way, and then you will still have frictions in your customer experience. So yeah.
I think this makes a lot of sense. But can you give a couple of concrete examples of how you would move from, for example, conservative to a digital master?
Yeah, and this is really about organization and about culture. Again, it's about the ability to adopt new technology, to embrace new technology, and that is actually a mindset that people need to take. As more and more people now have a mobile phone and do a frictionless purchase at Amazon.com, that's actually also the mindset that you want to get within your people. But you have to take them along in that change. It's not something that you just you turn the key and all of a sudden it's there. But also on the leadership capabilities, from top to bottom, you got to have this shared vision on where you actually want to go to with this digital transformation.
Yeah, that's key indeed. Yeah.
So once you've assessed all these aspects in a first part, so you've sort of determined your starting point. You also want to make sure that you, before you actually start diving into technology and start building everything that you need, you want to what we call create the context. And there you're actually going to look at the 3 levers of digital transformation. So you're going to look at people, process, and technology. So what you will do in this phase, you will actually align with your strategy. Make sure that you have the right stakeholder involvement. Going back to those that leadership vision that you will. You're going to lay out the roadmap, your future state, and basically drill that back into small MVPs that are going to be the first deliveries that you're going to be doing. But also your architecture. You want to make sure that you have a profound architecture, and particularly in the case of manufacturers, where there usually has been a lot of emphasis on the operational excellence, manufacturing execution, supply chain type of systems. You want to make sure that you have a great way forward in your architecture. So touching a little bit more on that architecture or the platform capabilities on the next slide, Larsen actually picked Bart's slide for this one. I just wanted to briefly touch on some of the core capabilities that you would want to look for in your roadmap when actually you're going on this journey. And the first one is marketing. As we already saw that with multiple brands, true dealers, you got to find a way to actually get to the heart of that customer and be there where the customer is. So you got to have your online channels up to speed. And make sure that you're there where the customer is. And you want to actually tie that into your opportunity process so that you can, your suspects and your prospects actually have in a good flow. Had a connected sales that we talked about here as well, particularly on the element of the configuration, making sure that what you sell can be shipped and delivered. And last but not least, of course, the digital experience. And making sure that through dealer portals you are able to do that marketing and help those dealers sell, but also on the run rate business, be able to have a commerce store where it's easy for your customers to actually do the reordering, like almost the Amazon-like experience, to get their parts in and anything like that. So those are the core capabilities. Of course, there's more, but from a connected sales and operations perspective that you want to look for in this journey. So
we have a question from the audience, Dico. What are the typical pitfalls in a transformation?
Well, in a transformation like this, the pitfall is that you actually too soon move into technology. Right. So not shaping basically the entire program and really involving all the stakeholders. Where you easily move into, this is going to be something that IT is going to be running. That's actually a big pitfall because it's not IT. Digital transformation is about the entire organization. So you want to make sure that you have everybody everybody on board. Another pitfall is that you're actually that your ambitions are too high. So start small and bring in increments as you go. Instead of having this big planning horizons of, within a year's time we will go live. No, start small, start with a couple of dealers in case of Mitsubishi, and then start rolling it out and building on the findings that you have. So don't put the bar too high in that first phase.
That makes sense. I think What I would like to add here is that element of the vision to value, right? So you start indeed with a top-down vision, but then also be able to quantify what could be the impact in order to create kind of the right buy-in and also check whether the initial pilots, MVPs are moving towards that target of financial benefit as well.
Yeah, you definitely want to keep tabs on those benefits that you want to reap from this journey. So,
Yeah, and finally, I would say culture. I mean, you're bringing together very skilled organizations, but to truly understand the zest of a company, how people think, what they are involved in, before you move to, let's say, the mechanics of process flows and design and so on, is so important. Because that needs to be a big picture which is clear to all the stakeholders. Well, it is very complicated to make sure that you absolutely do have that clarity before you start.
Yeah, and even more so in an international environment.
Absolutely,
with different cultures and
you want to have everybody on
board. We were really successful in our implementation, but in the end, if you want to say what's the lesson learned, spend more time up front. Spend more time up front.
Because you will gain it in...
It'll come back. It'll help you later on.
Yeah. Well, that's a great one, actually, and maybe that's a nice conclusion to the story. If you still have any questions for our panelists, this is a good time to ask them directly to Fabiana, and we'll try to answer them. From our end, I think it's been a great discussion, so I'd like to thank you very much. Thank the audience as well for the interactiveness, the questions. If you still have questions, there's some contact details on your screen right now on the slides. Feel free to reach out. This is something that we're very passionate about, so we'd love to talk more about this. And if you're looking for more resources to be inspired, check out our website and our YouTube channel. We've got all the recorded webinars there. And also we have some upcoming events. So if you're looking at field service, we have a experience workshop coming up on September the 26th. So feel free to register on our website. And also the rest of the topics have already been announced. So we'd love to interact with you. Any last thoughts from the panelists? Because I don't see any questions coming in.
Not from my side, so thanks for the discussion, It was pleasant.
Thank you too. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was very valuable to hear all the different insights. So on that note, thanks very much also to the audience. Hope to see you again soon, and stay safe out there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks everybody.